expository both to the government, investors, and even household. So how does it actually work? If you look at it from the international perspective, that is foreign direct investment, it actually shows the standard, the good representation of Nigeria economy. This exposes them to where we are and also business opportunity gap for them. Because if you look at the per capita income, that is looking at GDP divided by peoples in Nigeria, it's got, like you rightly said, it's like $1,000 dollars. If you look at that, you now know that there's an investment opportunity, because it's also ranked Nigeria at its actual status, right? That is if you are looking at Nigeria from investment perspective, you now say, okay, this is where Nigeria actually are based. And even in looking at that, sometimes we also see that most time it's not even good representation, because if you look at Nigerian population, right, and the purchasing power of Nigeria, you agree with me that it might not be reflecting our real capacity. Because if you look at the dollar value, right, by the time you deflate, that's when we have such. So it does not still mean that Nigeria does not have that capacity of purchasing power compared to other countries. And when you also look at it from government perspective, it also gives policy direction. Simply that the government will know that this sector is not doing well, so we need to do more. Or for instance, if you look at it from trade, right, you have to look at balance of trade and balance of payment. What do you do more in terms to attract much more investment? Also, if you also look at it from financial sector perspective, you discover that in financial sector, it does not really bring the employment. So what do we have to do? That means we have to look at agriculture the more. Agriculture will give much more employment, right? If you look at construction, it will give more employment. So you have to. So it exposes us and Nigerian policymakers to where investment can actually come from and where we can do better in our economy. And generally, when we talk about GDP, it exposes the output. It also exposes where Nigeria needs to do more to actually increase the output. What is our comparative advantages? What can we do more to actually enhance it? More so, if you look at Africa generally now, perhaps we are number 5. So that number 5 also have its own meaning, because we need to do more to actually increase our output, as it were. So it's overall exposition of our standard in terms of global level, in terms of GDP, as it were.
Okay, thank you so much, Ali. Yes, don't forget, you can send in your text messages as you join this conversation. We'd like to hear your opinions, and maybe you begin to understand.
Keep it short.
Keep it short and simple.
Names.
Yes, please. And okay, now, Professor Ken, let's talk policy. With a larger GDP, our debt to GDP ratio appears lower. So, could this affect how Nigeria borrows or manages its public finances?
It does. Although the actual fiscal law that sits on top of all of this is called Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. It prescribes a deficit, budget deficit to GDP shouldn't be more than 3, if I move to 4%. We will be violating that when we consume this $21.5 billion that is coming in, 15 billion yen, and 2.19 billion euro. When all that one hit the ground, that rate will be completely violated. And in fact, even the normal guidance on debt to GDP ratio is actually 40%. The World Bank keeps saying that the economy of the type of Nigeria, you can actually risk 50% or so. But those will be breached when these new ones hit the ground. They will breach all those guidelines. Although, in 2007, when the law came in, they didn't put in, only one that they allowed was the fiscal deficit. And they say that in the next 6 months after the adoption of the law, the Minister of Finance should advise the President in consultation with the National Assembly on all other ratios. That is, federal government debt to GDP ratio, state government, local governments, they do all the ratios. And then even revenue to GDP ratio. All these ratios needed to be stipulated there, but they didn't. And even the domestication. I looked at so many laws and fiscal laws all over the world. 90% of them, within 1 year, forces all levels of government to enter into it. Nigeria said, leave it, let it become when only 25 states have till now domesticated. So it's just the way Nigeria behaves. But back to your question, whether it has impact or so, it does have impact. The borrowing, I'm not going to be reflecting on the borrowing now because we will have time. Because, you know, government needs to borrow money to do things that will leverage economic growth. But the law there is very, very strict on what you can borrow money from. It says you can only borrow for capital expenditure and human resource development. And we know human resource development to be health, education, enterprise, and employment. It doesn't allow any other thing under that law. You can get your IGR